Hi, I'm Gary White for Channel 6 Central Kentucky Television. I'm here for our Political Focus program, and I have Daniel Ballou, who is a candidate for Supreme Court Justice for the 3rd District. And on our Political Focus program, we have the opportunity to get to know some of the candidates who are running for various political offices. And Mr. Ballou will be on the ballot in May for the primary for that office. And then there are, how many people running?
There are 3 of us running, and the top 2 run off in November.
In November, okay. So you will be on there, and it is a nonpartisan position, correct? Okay. So tell us a little about yourself, if you will.
Well, first of all, Gary, I want to thank you for asking me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with the voters. I'm from Williamsburg. Grew up in Williamsburg. My parents, grandparents from Williamsburg, Whitley County. And like I was telling you earlier, Gary, Whitley County, Williamsburg's about 2-hour and 40-minute drive from here, thereabouts. Most people recognize Williamsburg by either University of the Cumberlands, or used to be called Cumberland College, is in Williamsburg. Or also, people recognize Williamsburg from many Kentuckians who go to Gatlinburg, Disney World. If they go down I-75, the last county in Kentucky before you hit the state line is Whitley County and Williamsburg. So I grew up there. I graduated from Williamsburg High School in 1984 on a Friday, June the 1st. And I remember it vividly because 3 days later, Monday, June the 4th, 1984, I went to Parris Island, South Carolina. I joined the Marine Corps, spent 7 years in the Marine Corps on active duty as an enlisted Marine. I was discharged as a sergeant in 1991. Did 4 deployments, the last one being Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Got out of the Marine Corps, went to college at the University of Kentucky, majored in political science, got a bachelor's degree there. And then I went to law school at Ole Miss in Oxford, Mississippi, University of Mississippi, School of Law. After law school, I had an opportunity to, well, one thing, I was commissioned in the reserves. So a few years ago, I retired from the Marine Corps Reserve as a major. So I'm a retired Marine. But after law school, I also had an opportunity to clerk for Judge Eugene Seiler Jr. on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 6th Circuit. After my clerkship, I hung a shingle in my hometown of Williamsburg, practiced law there a couple of years, ran for district judge in the 34th District, which is McCreary and Whitley counties. Fortunately, we won that race and spent 5 years on the district bench. And then I ran for circuit court in the same circuit, Whitley and McCreary County. And I have been circuit judge for about 10.5 years. And that's...
Brings us to today, right?
Brings us to today, yeah.
So tell us, you said this is for Supreme Court Justice for the 3rd District.
Yeah.
Now obviously Williamsport is a little farther away, so how many counties?
Williamsburg, actually, the 3rd District goes even further east than Williamsburg. It starts in Bell County on the southern end of the district, goes up through Jackson and Clay and Knox and Estill and Lee. But anyway, as far west as Nelson County, the northern part of the district, northwest, and then Metcalfe and Moreau, in the southwest part of the district. So it's a very large geographical area. 27 counties. It's very time-consuming, but it's an enjoyable experience. Meet so many wonderful people that I wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to meet, and it's a real blessing. So,
now, what is the duty? What are the duties of a Supreme Court justice?
Well, in Kentucky we have 4 levels in the judiciary. We have 2 trial courts, the district court and the circuit court, and then we have 2 appellate courts, the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. Kentucky Supreme Court, of course, is the highest appellate court. It's where the decisions are made final. So it's probably easiest to explain it in the context of criminal law because that's what people are most interested in and understand the most, because major civil litigation usually doesn't make the news, and they don't usually make movies out of it and so forth. So the average citizen who doesn't have any dealings or very little dealings with the court of justice, they usually think in the context of criminal law. So I'll use that as an example. It's a little different on the civil side, but misdemeanor court is district court, circuit court is felony court. When criminal cases are appealed, if the sentence is less than 20 years, it goes to the Court of Appeals first, and then if it's over 20 years sentence involved in the criminal case, it goes straight to the Supreme Court. And of course, anything that comes to the Court of Appeals, it can also go to the Supreme Court. But the Kentucky Supreme Court is the highest court in our state, and that's the way other states are as well. Their state Supreme Courts are the highest court in their state. So it's kind of like the final decisions are made there. So I hope that makes sense.
Yes. So you can start out, if you start out in a lower court, you can ultimately potentially end up going before the Supreme Court as well.
Sure. Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
It can work its way up to, and then that could be potentially the final decision on the case.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, there's all I don't want to get too detailed because frankly it'll be boring to most people. but issues that come in the state court can, if there's a issue of federal jurisdiction, it can also go over to the federal side. But generally speaking, that's what you just said. That's how it works. So.
And what are the qualifications for a Supreme Court justice?
Well, they're the same as for a circuit judge. You have to be a licensed attorney for at least 8 years and live in the district for which you are seeking the office. So that's with circuit judges and Court of Appeals judges and Supreme Court justices, same qualification. District judges, you don't have to have 8 years. I think it's 2 or 4. But I don't remember. I once knew. I was a district judge, but I think it may be 2 years as a member of the bar, and you have to live in the district where you're seeking office. Right. So it just so happens that all three of us running this year are judges, but that's not a requirement. Okay. Nor do I think it should be. I mean, I think it's helpful, but it's not. It's not a requirement.
So, for the Supreme Court, decisions made there can affect everybody because that can set precedents and all that kind of stuff, right? For other cases. Yeah. Are there any particular cases that you are aware that you foresee coming up that, if you were elected, might be coming before you?
Well, certainly with the political climate as it is, a lot of things are coming to court. I could probably, I could certainly envision some things coming to the court that are widely expressed in the news today. But as judges and also as judicial candidates, we can't comment on pending cases or issues that are likely to come before the court. So even if I knew what was going to end up in the court, whether it be my court now as a trial judge, as a circuit judge, or potentially as a Supreme Court, should I win this election, even if I knew what was going to be coming up, I can't comment on it. I cannot honestly tell you how I would rule anyway. Right. Because a person's political or personal persuasion as a judge has to be left completely out of their decision making, completely out of it. So what we do is we look at, we're like referees, and I often use this analogy, and in no way do I mean to diminish the significance of what goes on in the court system. It's more important than a ball game. Whether it's a first offense DUI in district court or whether it's a major case in the Kentucky Supreme Court, it's a bigger deal than a ball game. So I don't mean to imply in any way, but by my analogy I'm about to give, that these issues we deal with are similar to sports. However, there is a parallel between the role of a judge, whether it's a trial judge or an appellate judge, and that of a referee. You know, we live in a sports culture. America is a sports culture. Sometimes I think it's too obsessed, although I'm part of the problem because I love ESPN, I love Paul Feinbaum, the SEC network. But we are consumed with sports in America. So I think it's a good analogy to use to explain to folks who are not involved and never been involved in the court system, a referee and a judge have got to have a similar role. So that's why I could never referee a game between Kentucky and Duke, for example, because I've already picked teams, and I'm not going to switch. Even if you could come up with a specific example, or if I could come up, or any other person could come up with a specific example of an issue that is likely to be in the court, I'm not supposed to talk about it anyway, and frankly, I've got enough on my caseload now. I don't want to think about potential hypothetical cases. I have my own work to do. But furthermore, I don't know how I would rule or what my opinion is, because these trial lawyers in trial courts and appellate lawyers that come to appellate courts, some of them make it look easy, but it's not. It takes an enormous amount of work, legal research, legal writing, analytical thinking as an attorney before they ever come to court. So it takes an enormous amount of work. And the appellate judges, we have to wait and read their briefs. You know, they might have a wonderful legal argument that on the surface I might not even imagine. I might just think as a citizen, I don't like this policy or I don't like that policy. But what I think about the policy is irrelevant. I'm a judge, like a referee. An example is back in the 80s, I think, when college basketball instituted the three-point shot. And you probably were about 5 then. but back then when that happened, there probably were some referees who refed college basketball games who didn't like it. They didn't want it going like the NBA, or for whatever reason they might not like it. That doesn't mean they have to enforce the rule anyway. It doesn't matter what they personally think of it. So it's the same way with judges. So I can't really, I think there's probably some stuff that I can watch the news and think, oh, this is probably coming to court. In the same thing in my, locally where I'm a trial judge, I can hear about something, see something in the newspaper, or hear it on the radio while I'm driving to work, and I'm thinking, well, I'll see that next week or after the indictments are returned or whatever. But I cannot and should not and will not formulate an opinion on it before I see the briefs, before I hear the legal arguments. And I'm kind of long-winded.
Well, that answers the question.
Did it explain it well?
Yes.
Okay.
So, as we said, I'm here with Daniel Ballou, who is running for Supreme Court Justice for the 3rd District, which the 3rd District in Kentucky includes Marion, Washington, and Nelson counties. But there are 3 people who will be on the ballot. It is a nonpartisan race. And then the top 2 vote getters of those 3 will move on to the November ballot for the general election. What makes you feel that you are the most qualified candidate for this office?
Well, that I respect your question, and I get that question a lot. But respectfully, I'm going to rephrase it before I answer it. And I know, Gary, that you're asking a normal reporter question and a question that the public wants to hear the answer to. But I think if I answer that specific question, I may inadvertently come across in some way as being negative towards Judge David Tapp and Judge Debbie Lambert, who are also running, who I think are fine people. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I am more qualified than they are, because I'm not. I'm just not. They're very qualified, and they're decent and honorable people. So, but I'll just talk about me. And I know that that's not what you meant, Gary. I know that's not what you meant, but I'm afraid if I don't add that preamble before I answer the question, that I may come across as speaking ill or negatively of them. And to me, more important than winning an election is keeping my integrity. And if I ever have to brag too much about myself or put somebody else down to win an election, I'd rather lose, because I'd rather keep my integrity. So that, with that long-winded preface to your question, I think, we all come to the table as human beings with our own unique life experience. And any attorney who is graduated law school, passed the bar, lives in the district, and as an attorney in good standing for the required 8 years, I believe it is capable and qualified. I think what maybe separates me from the average candidate for, frankly, any office, not just this office, but any office, is my experience in the Marine Corps. I came from a world, beginning when I was 18, I signed up when I was 17, when I went to boot camp I turned 18, in a world where the core values are honor, courage, and commitment. And those are words that are not cliches or some type of political propaganda. They are characteristics that you live by as a Marine and that you literally die by. So, you know, as elected officials, whether you're in the executive or judiciary or legislative branch, you know, we are called upon to make tough decisions. Well, the Marine Corps certainly prepared me for making tough decisions, and the Marine Corps certainly prepared me to carry out my duties even when it's uncomfortable, to put it mildly. And frankly, everything I've done since I left the Marine Corps has been fairly simple in comparison. The skill sets that I gained there can be utilized in other challenges that life may have to offer in other positions of responsibility and fiduciary duty. I work for the people as a circuit judge in McCreary and Whitley County. They do not work for me. And when I say the people, I mean all people, all human beings, whether they live in my district or not, whether they vote or not, whether they're a good, upstanding, law-abiding citizen or a convicted felon in an orange jumpsuit and chains in my courtroom. I work for the people. So, and that's the same thing that I did in the Marine Corps. So it comes natural to me and it comes easy to me. Am I chasing rabbits here? Am I answering? I now forgot what your question.
That's fine. Why you want people to vote for you?
I think, you know, and Gary, you know, I'm sure you've interviewed a lot of people running for office. One of the things that is somewhat distasteful to me is when people brag on themselves too much. But you know, as a candidate, we've got to talk about ourselves because you don't know me. Most of the people who are going to see this don't know me at all. It's a little different at home. I grew up there. You know, people know me. So I know I have to talk about myself so folks will get to know me and hopefully decide for themselves if they want to hire me. Because this is what this is, a job interview. It's nothing more than that. It is a job interview. And you, the voters, the public, are the employers. You decide who you want to hire. And whoever you decide you hire, I respect that decision. And I'm going to support and pray for whoever wins. Because whoever wins this election works for all of us. Public service. You know, one of the things I've noticed in the judiciary, Gary, there's a lot of wonderful people serving in the judiciary at the state and federal level. But there's also some folks that's got a dose of case of judgeitis. They think that robe they put on is some type of robe of a monarch, of a prince or a king or a queen. And it's not. It is a uniform. Just like the utility uniform that I wore in the Marine Corps for many, many years. It is a servant's uniform. And some people in the judiciary think that the bench that we sit on is a throne. It is not. It is a workbench. Just like the workbench that my great-grandfather had when he was a carpenter. My grandma made him leave the coal mines and he became a house builder in Whitley County. But anyway, it's a workbench. That is what that we sit on in the courtroom. So I think it's very important that we maintain humility. You know, first of all, I need to humble myself under the Lord because God is in charge of me, not me. And whenever you see me do something good or right, it's because, well, right then I was listening to the Lord lead me. When Dan takes over, I'm a selfish sinner just like every other human. So I want to be led by God and serve the people, all the people. They don't work for me. I work for you. And I think that worldview is lost often. amongst politicians. And I'm not pointing my finger at any certain person, and certainly not any certain party, because it is very much a nonpartisan or bipartisan problem, equally distributed. And I'm not above falling into that trap as well. I'm not any better than anyone else. I am capable of being overcome with ego and selfishness, but I strive to serve just like I did in the Marine Corps, except frankly, judges are a lot better paid than Marines, and it's a lot safer. So, and it's a lot more comfortable, but it's the same worldview. It's the same mentality. It's the same approach to work. It's the same approach to duty. It's the same approach to accomplishing the mission. It's the same approach to serving others and putting your troops first. My office staff, for example, they come first, not me. So, you know, that's what I think that we're supposed to do as public servants. Public service is a calling. It is not a job. It is more than a job. It is a calling. We are called, whether you're a Marine, a soldier, sailor, airman, a Marine, a public school teacher, well, for that matter, a school teacher of any type, a firefighter, a police officer, a paramedic, whatever you do, the folks who run the maintenance for your cities and county departments, this is a public service. We're working for the people. It's an enormous responsibility that we should take serious. Now, Gary, I don't take myself serious, but I absolutely take my duties serious, because my duties are about the people. Now, am I overdoing? Am I talking here? I don't know how much time I'm allowed to have.
Dan Ballou, who is running for Supreme Court Justice for the 3rd District, which will include Marion, Washington, Nelson counties. He'll be on the ballot for the primary in May, and then the top 2 candidates will move on to the general election in November. We appreciate you coming in here and talking with us.
Well, thanks so much for having me. And I talk too much sometimes. I get on the roll, I'm on hush.
Well, the Political Focus is here to let people from our viewership get to know the candidates who are running. So we appreciate you coming here and talking and letting people know about yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been Gary White for Channel 6 Central Kentucky Television.